Okay, it's episode 11 of Income Aggression. And this is the episode when we really go for broke, when we gamble everything, all the small wins we've made so far for Froskurinn. Like, we made this show to show off your expertise in Chinese League of Legends, to help introduce the West to some real context, in case they're kind of like, they're eating the baby food of lollysports.com, but they want some actual like solid food now. They want some nutrients. They want to get off the formula, and they want to actually become adults, and capable of processing things themselves without easily processed narratives force fed down their throat. With someone saying, "Here comes a plane. Do you like Uzi Eye? Enjoy." Anyway, so now that we've built up this kind of bank of good, positive feelings, good associations around your name, we're now going to step outside the comfort zone of Chinese League of Legends and gamble it all by spending an episode not only directly talking about teams like TSM, Fnatic, etc., but then comparing them to Chinese players. See, I feel like we've come full circle here. It's like in a movie, what will often happen is the hero will face like his worst challenge, like the guy who's like the final boss, the guy who like almost kills him, or something that he fails at. But the key thing is he has to face that in Act 1, because getting broken by that then sets him on his hero's journey, of like recovering from that, getting the mentor who trains him up. I think you see where this is going, who kind of like educates him in the way, gives him the smaller tasks that he has to overcome, and eventually at the end he's ready to face the final boss, to overcome the same thing that had crushed him before. So in light of all that, now we will go into the Mid Season Invitational, the MSI, which is going to take place tomorrow in Tallahassee, Florida, in the United States of America. Now, see, the great part about the way I said that is usually you'd start off, like, it'd take place in New York State, United States, and everyone would be like, we could have stopped after New York, I know where that is. But this part, the context grows as it goes, So you go, Tallahassee, they're like, where's that? Florida? Yeah, sort of know that. United States, USA, okay, right, excellent. So anyway, the MSI is taking place in wonderful Tallahassee, Florida. First things first, let's just get this right out of the way for Froskurinn, so we can make no bones about this. We're not going to build up to this. Froskurinn thinks EDG is going to win this whole tournament. True or false?
True.
To what extent? Like, what level of confidence do you have that they're going to win this tournament?
I was talking... Okay, people are always asking me about, like, Fnatic and TSM, and I have no idea why, because I'm a Chinese expert, but they're like, hey, what do you think about this North American team? What do you think about this European team? And it's usually TSM, and I will say this. I think it is possible that TSM could win. But the thing that people need to understand is that if TSM do win, it's a massive upset, and that's where I stand on it. So EDG, I give like a huge favor to win because I think that their biggest competition is going to be SKT. And I would say that majority of sane people agree that SKT are going to be the winners because Koreans have shown that historically they know how to execute their talent better than any other region. Even if all of their star talent has left, they still know that, hey, if you give us talent, like Easy Hoon, we know how to make it godlike. But if I look across every single position of SKT and EDG, like the fact that China has always been second place, and now we probably have the best Chinese team that has ever been. And the joke is, oh yeah, because it's got 2 Koreans on it now. Whatever. It's the best team that China has ever produced. They're always taking second place. I'm going to take my chances and I'm going to say they're going to be first this time.
What do you mean they're always taking second place?
They're always taking second place. China always takes a backseat to Korea, but at international events.
So in terms of countries here, okay, I understand that. What did you mean about that first part you referenced? It's like you started to go somewhere and then you pulled back there. You were like, and at every single position. Oh yeah, and about another thing over here. Like, what do you mean every position?
Every single position, EDG is superior except for mid lane. And the guy who we have in mid lane is known for killing the guy that SKT has in mid lane. Like, that's his, like, I don't think Pawn's better than Faker, but Pawn has a reputation of being able to solo kill Faker. So it's not like it's that unmatched. But I think in jungle, Bingy versus Clearlove, especially with Clearlove's current performance and Bingy having come on his decline, like obviously he's kind of swooping back up, but I think Clearlove's better. Marn versus Koro, I'm actually going to give that one to Koro. I think there's no comparison in Bang versus Deft. Deft is the best AD carry in the world right now.
There's one position left.
It's Wolf versus Mako.
Yeah, I don't think you can really conclusively say Mako is better than Wolf.
This is very true, but Mako has looked amazing from a rookie position.
Like, I actually think, if anything, Mako's probably the most overrated member of EDG, in as much as whenever you're in the best team, especially one that has any level of dominance in your region, you're always who the weakest player will always be overrated, or the player who doesn't have to do as much will always essentially get, to some degrees, almost full credit in a weird way. So we won't go down the path of like I'll call it getting high and imagining that because you're the best team in your region, you have every single player is the best at your region. That's a bit ridiculous now. But okay, so I actually agree with you on this point. I think that EDG has the most talent in the tournament and has the best positionally, almost the best lineup. Okay, there's a couple where it's debatable, but even the ones that are debatable, I don't think you can conclusively say the other way on most of them, okay? So, for example, if I make the Wolf Mako one, now that's pretty 50-50. Even if someone says Marin's better than Koro, which actually I could see an angle for it. It's not like by a massive amount. It's definitely a debate. You have, obviously, Faker is better than Pawn, though. That's irrelevant to the fact that in their direct matchup, Pawn has at times gotten the better. Although that's obviously an interesting dynamic itself, because one of the few people who actually in the direct matchup Faker's ever had troubles with happens to be on the team also, where we're having this discussion of how do you compare them player to player, so that's interesting in itself. Let me think though. So okay, you kind of set it up in the intro there, kind of how I actually think of SKT versus EDG, which is I actually think SKT versus EDG is like talent versus synergy, okay? But I don't want to make it that extreme, though. That's my point, because I don't want to make it like, it's not like ADG is Samsung White and they just brute force it with a million good players, okay? Obviously, there's some synergy, there's some tactics there. Is there going to be a difference between the two teams in that sense? Like, if you did the extreme version there, like, well, they've got the most talented players, but SKT's maybe the better team overall, would that actually tell you who's going to win out of that? What do you think?
I think actually the win conditions and that it'll really come down to is dragon fights. We're in a very dragon-centric meta right now, and to be frank, to EDG's style is they don't really give a fuck about dragon. They take the first one, and then they don't really care about it, and it's all about like their really early Baron control and how punishing they can be with the Baron versus any other team that gets a Baron. And it's like about their late game team fighting. So I think if EDG get baited into early dragon fights, because again, they take a lot of scaling champions as well, they can get screwed over by a smarter team who like sets them up to do that. But like throughout the region, they haven't fallen into that trap. So I would hope that they wouldn't go to MSI and then suddenly fall for it. But if I were going to say like what would be the hinge there for EDG to fail, it would be teams getting the better of them in mid-game dragon fights.
In terms of LPL, there were teams who had as much talent overall. I mean, teams like OMG, LGD, they had a lot of talent on their lineups as well. To what degree does EDG actually, how good are they in terms of like synergy, in terms of actual team play between the members?
During the LPL season, because that was probably the height of their performance, their playoffs performance was maybe like a 7 out of 10 to EDG's like full ceiling that we've seen demonstrated in the LPL performance, although it's hard to say because LGD were playing at a higher ceiling, so if you're like comparing them, they were head and shoulders the best Chinese team in the region. They would use multiple different compositions. It wasn't like they were just like a one-trick pony of just like a team fighting team that a lot of people really understand Chinese teams to be. They would use poke compositions, pick compositions, team fight compositions, mid-game power spike, late-game power spike. They have massive champion pools across every single board. It's not like any one of their players can get banned out or anything like that. Their synergy, the way they would show the evolution of their style, how they went from like their standard 5v5 style to more of like a Samsung White skirmish style, and how that's evolved over time. Deft coming into his own as a carry and Deft coming into his own as a true laner. EDG were unstoppable during the LPL regular season.
Do you have any concerns that when the team goes to MSI, either they'll have to play a different style or their style won't be as effective against international teams?
I did make the comment last episode that I actually thought, and again, like you were making fun of me that I was just covering my bases, that LGD would be better suited for international competition just because LGD are a rotation-based team, whereas EDG still make good rotations. Like, it's not like they're just idiots when it comes to that, but they're more about, again, that fighting. They're about late-game team fights and late-game macro calls. Teams that have really early objective dragon control, like this is your one weakness. If you can bait EDG into fighting you mid-game over a bad dragon setup, Because usually they just let it go and they just continue on to their lane phase and make their skirmishes and their picks on the lanes or with teleport plays. Like you could probably do some damage there.
So okay, here's the weird question then. So this already sounds like a dangerous question by the way I set it up, but it's legitimate as a question, okay? So when you're talking like that, in a weird way, that almost makes it sound like a team like Fnatic might match up well against EDG, because Fnatic likes to fight early, they like to group up. Meanwhile, a team like TSM, in theory, yeah, they actually are a much smarter team than previous TSMs, but in theory, they're still more of the laning team, and then they move into sort of the mid-game. So does that mean that Fnatic has a better chance against EDG than TSM?
This is my problem with Fnatic. And I don't want people to get upset like I'm bashing on Fnatic, but there seems to be this understanding or this conception that Fnatic are a Chinese-style Western team, which is really concerning to me because it tells me that that's what Western people think that Chinese League of Legends is about. Fnatic fight for no reason. They just Kelsey says it all the time. They take a late game scaling composition, and then they go and they try to fight with it early and mid game. There's no reason to do that. You fight on your power spikes. The power spike word, it's so overused and it's misused sometimes, but it's true. You just find when you're strong and you go and you fight. With Fnatic, they just fight all the time. And if that's what Westerners think that Chinese teams do, they're absolutely incorrect. Chinese teams do like to fight, but they fight for reasons. They fight for objectives. They don't just fight to kill each other. That's what Invictus Gaming used to do. That's not why EDG are the best team. So no, I don't think that Fnatic would be a good matchup for EDG, because if they fight how they did in their regular season, where they fight for no reason, they fight when they're not strong, and they just fight to fight because they take massive AoE, hard engage compositions, they're just going to get rolled by a team who actually knows when to fight.
So then here's the question. It's all great to say that in theory, but if Fnatic starts to try and make fights happen, if it's not the right time, EDG will correctly disengage and not fight?
That's what they've shown to do. I mean, the flip side of that is that they bait EDG, and EDG do try to fight, and since they're trying to be reactionary to a hard engage composition, that Fnatic are able to pick up snowball kills, but I don't think that Fnatic's a good matchup. I think TSM's a better matchup to EDG than Fnatic.
Okay, bold question here. How do you think that some of the Fnatic players would actually do against EDG? So thinking of people like Febiven, the mid laner. Yellowstar, obviously, the beloved Yellowstar.
I've only watched a very limited number of Fnatic's games, so it's hard for me to understand the context of their entire career and their skills. I mean, I don't know if I could safely, definitively say on that. Even if you're talking about a 1v1 or a 2v2, Steelback's going for Fnatic, isn't he? It's not Reckless.
As far as I know, yep.
Okay, so it's Steelback, Yellowstar. I mean, you're probably not going to see a 2v2 anyway, so it's not we can talk about the lane dynamic and the matchup of Steelback, Yellowstar versus Deft and Mako or anything like that. It'll probably be, which top laner gets more CS in the lane swap, who gets the early dragon control.
Since obviously on Fnatic, people always talk about the synergy of Huni and Reignover. This is a big part of why Huni was able to be kind of the breakout rookie of the season. How do you think the matchup in terms of the jungle and top of EDG works there? Because, I mean, how much of Clearlove's play, will they just switch and try and counter that and have him support Koro all the time? Will he continue to move all around the map, as you claim?
Koro's used to losing lane. You have to think for the majority of Koro's career, he actually just flat out lost lane. It's only until recently that he's turned into the superstar where he's able to play both the carry role and the bruiser tank role. But traditionally, he's a tank bruiser player that knows that he's going to lose lane. He just minimizes his losses, and he makes plays off of getting involved with the team through early teleport usage or things like that. And Clearlove doesn't necessarily really gank his lane at all. He's much more about playing around the mid lane and the bottom lane, whether Deft and Mako are on the top lane or if they're on the bottom. Clearlove will always play in between the two Korean powers, and then it's Koro and Clearlove that come out of the bush with a teleport play and a Clearlove gank. So as far as if you're telling me that Huni and Reignover are going to be playing to each other, then Koro's on his own up there.
Should the bot lane of EDG beat all the other bot lanes in this tournament?
Wild Turtle, Lustboy, Steelback, Yellowstar. I don't know who AHQ's bot lane is, but Wolf and Bang, I would say yes. And a 2v2. Deft is the best AD carry in the world right now.
What do you think of TSM's chances going against EDG?
I think they have a better chance just because their objective control mid-game is better as far as, again, like dragon fights and things like that. Bjergsen is obviously a really strong 1v1, so I'd be really curious. I'm like actually really curious to see how he matches up against Pawn in like a 1v1. The thing about Bjergsen, though, is...
I mean, I do believe we've seen that matchup before.
Well,
okay.
But they won one game, Thorin.
Oh, yeah, my bad.
Yeah, calm down. The thing about Bjergsen is he doesn't roam as much as I would like him to, or leave his lane as much. And again, like I haven't watched every single game, so I'm sure there's games where Bjergsen does roam. But as far as like considering him, like if I think about who Bjergsen is as a player and my understanding of him, it's like he's that 1v1 talent. He does good in team fights. He's great when he walks over to the dragon fight, but he's not like constantly impacting the map or like roaming around or walking into the enemy jungle or anything like that. Do I have the correct assumption here?
I mean, I think he's more lane orientated in general, yeah. Unless it's like they're going to group up and go for a fight, in which case almost all mid laners surely are going to join the team.
Yeah, but if you think about that in comparison to like Pawn's playstyle right now, whereas Pawn, if he gets any sort of advantage end lane, even if he does get an advantage, if he just finds his item power spike, he's immediately going to walk into the enemy jungle and he's just going to blow your jungler up. He loves doing that shit. So I just think that Pawn's playstyle right now impacts the map more on a whole than if Bjergsen, finds his good 1v1 in the mid lane. Even if he gets that extra kill, it's not punished to the fullest extent that it could be.
Do you think EDG would just try and gank the mid lane constantly, shut it down, make Bjergsen play safe?
No. I think they'll gank the mid lane, but I don't think it's going to be their priority. Their priority is always securing Deft. Like, it's early game to Pawn, and then mid game, late game to Deft.
Okay. What do you think about... Okay, here's the interesting thing, because actually, if we look at how I think most people have the kind of... If we did our own internal power ranking, okay, almost everyone has either SKT or EDG number one. So take that out of the equation, okay? You can pick one or two there. It doesn't really matter. But most people are going to pick TSM above Fnatic as 3 and 4, okay? Now, if the actual group stage plays out like that, that means that if EDG is number one, then they would only play someone like TSM in the final. They'd play Fnatic in the semi-finals because it'd be 1 versus 4, presumably. Mm-hmm. But if EDG was second, they'd actually play TSM in a best of 5. Now, in a best of 5, how do you think TSM could do against EDG? Would they win a game?
Probably. I mean, TSM's not a shit team. They're a good team. I still think that it's important to understand that if TSM win, I still consider it an upset. I consider EDG and SKT the superior teams as far as like their consistency and their results. We are starting to see a higher ceiling from TSM in terms of like their international play, like at IM, but that was so long ago. I don't know. It's really hard for me to like be super specific on like how Western teams are going to match up to like a Chinese team. And what type of EDG is going to show up. Like, EDG in the playoffs, yes, they still looked amazing, but, I mean, Pawn's hurting right now. There's all those pictures of him, like, bent over, messing with his waist. I know that they didn't take you as their sub. They took Fire Loli, so that's actually a good sign.
What do you think? Okay, throughout the whole LPL season, including the playoffs, just because the LGD almost beat EDG, you don't have to answer them. Which do you think the team was who gave EDG like the toughest game or the toughest matchup in games where it looked like both people were really trying? What do you think kind of style do you think went the best against EDG's style?
In like the entirety of LPL or just the playoffs?
Just pick out the best example you can of all of it.
Huh.
Like, was there someone where when they beat them or came close, you were like, they have like a good style against that? Like, that's a good approach to trying to shut down what EDG want to do? I
actually think, and you're gonna roll your eyes because I'm gonna say Invictus Gaming.
Why is that?
On the end of their career, because Kakao was just playing so well, and you have to think like again, you're gonna it's Clear Love. just like how his style was matching up, and you know that they have Rookie as their mid laner to kind of face off along Pawn, and Kid and Kitties are like a solid bot lane. And IG were very much about early dragon control. Like they're way more dragon oriented than even a lot of the other LPL teams are, and they're better at it because they have like that good mixture of like still making smart rotation plays on the majority for their season. But I mean, you saw it yourself, like when they traded the Dragon for the Baron. Like they are a very dragon oriented team, and so when EDG would play them, it would almost be like a gamble of we're going to take the first dragon and then we're just going to try to beat them to Baron before they get 5 dragons.
Okay, so you picked IG as the team that you thought matched up best, and the first name you said was Cacao. Is that a favourable sign then going forwards for EDG, that actually this tournament, one of the bizarre features of it is there's no team in the tournament who have a particularly strong individual jungler? Like even SK Telecom, the Koreans who've just won OGN, actually that's probably their weakest position overall in the whole team. Does this play into EDG's favour? I mean, do you think this kind of shores up some of their weaknesses?
The fact that I think that Clearlove is the best jungler going into this tournament, yeah, it definitely does. And it's funny that you talk about like the jungle pool. Although in North America, Thorin's considered a high jungle, isn't he?
In North America?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, continue, yeah.
I mean, yeah. Clearlove is Kelsey just released her stats piece where it shows like all the gold that Clearlove gets, and even if you want to like interpret those stats whatever way you choose, it just, the one thing that it does show is that EDG, they thrive when Clearlove thrives. It's all about Clearlove. How he gets involved and what his score looks like impacts directly EDG's performance. Whatever that means, it's Clearlove has to be involved. And so if he's not facing any like true opposition as far as the jungle or someone who's going to make him sweat, then that's just an easier time for him to just do Clearlove things, which turns into doing EDG things.
Even if you have EDG down as like these are the favorites, these are the team who can win, you'll notice actually if you ever listen to any of some of the Insight episodes where I predicted against SK Telecom at times, or said SK Telecom wouldn't win, all that sort of shit, part of the reason why I always gave a slight caveat to it is I said that I actually I'm someone who in general esports theory, I do kind of subscribe to the idea that superstar players are superstars for a reason. They really are just above and beyond what even star players can do. And so if you really have a superstar, like a top 5 type player in the world, especially like a top 5 all-time type player, they will always be the ultimate wild card to a degree. Like if they're on the best team, then yeah, you pick them as a favorite anyway. But sometimes if they're just on the second or third best team, you have to always acknowledge, to at least to some minor degree, no matter what that team does, that guy might just have the one game where he just wins the whole game for you, you know. So obviously Faker's someone where he has that capability. Is that like a concern for you at all? Do you think EDG as a team is good enough to beat the Faker SKT if they play them a bunch of times?
Just to be blunt, I'm super terrified of Faker. You're absolutely right. He's like the one thing where I'm just like, if Faker gets LeBlanc, if they don't ban correctly against him, if he just gets an amazing matchup and he just goes off. I wanted GE Tigers to win, because GE Tigers versus EDG, I wasn't afraid of that at all. I was like, GE Tigers, from everything that I've seen about them, this is something that I actually disagreed with on Monty. I thought that the GE Tigers wouldn't take to the meta shifts very well, because I thought that they had really limited champion pools. Not like super limited, but more restricted than other elite teams. And so I thought that meta shifts would like really fuck their performance. And so I wanted the GE Tigers to win and to beat SKT, but then the 3-0.
It also ruined our Lord bet. Like I had to call one to your Lord, so now even if EDG win, it's over. The Lord bet's ruined. It's already ruined. So that's ruined. And also now, as much as you might disagree, if SKT beats EDG, I'll just be like, GE would have done it as well. So you can't win on that one, I'm afraid. You can't win. So anyway, just throwing that out there.
No, but don't worry. If EDG beat SKT by Reddit logic, that then means that because SKT 3-0 GE, that EDG would have 3-0'd GE. See how that works?
No, you see, you're going the wrong way here. You should just do the same thing in reverse. You'd be like, well, I always said LGD would have done better anyway. So that's your fallback, okay? Every analyst has to set up like a way out of the sticky situation they get themselves into. So, okay, here's another question for you then.
No, I'm standing strong. EDG, I think, is going to win MSI. I give them the majority. I already understood my logic for it. Like, China has always been the second best region. This is the best team that they've ever produced. I think this is the weakest that Korea has ever looked. Not saying that Korea is the weakest or trying to, like, But this is, I think, the weakest that Korea has ever looked. This is the best chance to strike.
So we've talked in the past about the differing philosophy in terms of pick ban in China.
Yep.
How would that affect the possibility of like Faker going crazy? Like, do you think they will specifically like target ban Faker and take out? Like, will they be crazy enough to leave up LeBlanc for a game?
I hope not. Especially because Pawn's on the roster. I would hope that he would help steer them. And also, they just picked up Reapert as a coach.
Okay.
So they've got Aaron and Reapert. Trying to think about it. There are different picks in Korea, though, that are prioritized.
If you and Kelsey had done the right thing, you'd now be able to say they picked up a top 20 all-time player, Reapert, but you can't say that, so, you know. Just okay player, Reapert, you know. No clear love, that's for sure. He certainly wasn't any kind of a clear. In fact, he probably says to clear love, like, I'm glad to actually have been around a great player in my career. Now I'm on EDG, you know. Okay, yeah, okay, continue on, yeah.
There are very different pick priorities between Korea and China.
Even on top 20 lists, apparently, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, but it's really, it's a little bit concerning for me. I don't want to see EDG get smashed by like an Urgot and like they've played some Urgot in LPL, but it's not near as front focus as it is for Korea or how Korea's been abusing it. Although I don't know about the Xerath thing, why Korea's like still on that. And I think we're playing on 5.7. So Ziggs is really strong right now. Oriana's super strong. Xerath, I guess is okay. So
you obviously have predicted that they're going to win anyway, but just to make this clear, this tournament should be the best performance by a Chinese team in sort of the LCS era. I mean, it should be better than Starhorn Royal Club, should be better than OMG, this should be the one where finally China like takes back the title that World Elite had sort of going into the LCS era, the best team in the world.
Yes, I think that this iteration of EDG is better than when OMG 3-0'd Najin, when EDG lost to HQ, when Starhorn Royal Club managed to make second place twice.
And should, by what you've said before, and at the end of the tournament, if we had I don't know if they have an official MVP title, but the MVP should be going to Deft.
Yeah, I agree. I think the MVP of the season needs to go to Deft as far as the LPL regular season. So I would hope. And to my understanding, Deft is really taking this seriously. He wants to win Worlds. There's like all of these little chats and things, and like the Korean players, they talk to each other in English now just because they're so used to it when they're like on their client. And it's like Rookie and Pawn, and they're talking to each other, and Rookie's like, come play, and Pawn's like, no, I can't. Deft wants Worlds, have to practice. And that they're, constantly always practicing. So I guess like Pawn is kind of like not having fun. I'm sure he's still trying, but obviously he's like injured. But Deft, I guess, we're winning Worlds, we're practicing all the time, we're going to make it.
Judging by the passive-aggressive comments that I've seen on Twitter, I get the sense that you and/or Kelsey think that Pawn is overrated and that he can't, like, he's not even an MVP candidate. Like, he's not even the second best player on EDG. So come on, fess up. What's going on here?
Okay, they're having some people seem to think that Pawn is the primary true carry of EDG. Sorry, LoL Esports, he's not. He's not the primary. And this is my favorite part of that. Even in his the Twisted Fate game where he goes 0-6, it just shows how important Pawn is to their playstyle because he was able to carry them on a champion that was effectively rendered useless. Like, Pawn got bodied, no lie. Did Pawn do an amazing job for getting bodied? Yeah. Is he an amazing mid laner? Yes. Does he dictate EDG's playstyle with his mid picks? Yeah, but majority of mid players do that. Like, Pawn isn't by no means bad, but he is not the true carry of EDG. EDG revolve around Deft and Clearlove. And like the Twisted Fate game that article references, if you watch it, that's all about Deft and Clearlove hard carrying the fact that Pawn got bodied. Pawn's gold card didn't send Imp to get killed by the Sivir Boomerang. Imp immediately cleansed it and then walked into the Sivir Boomerang. So, like, I don't want any of that bullshit. Like, if Pawn hadn't flashed and gold carded, Imp wouldn't have died right there and Deft wouldn't have gotten it. So good. I mean, Pawn's good, but he's not the carry.
Okay. But that all you've said there is that essentially Deft's the true carry.
Deft is the true carry.
Sounded to me like you guys are trying to go further than that. You were trying to suggest that Pawn's not even the second best player on EDG or second most important or whatever.
It's Clearlove and Deft. I know you try because you want me to say it.
Of course
okay.
it is.
No, Thorin,
Okay.
just okay.
Yeah.
Not even just to Thorin. Just
Here's
anyone.
here's a quick question then. So in that case, it should be possible for real. Klirlov MVP of this tournament. He outclasses all the other junglers. EDG wins. He dominates them. Why not? Why not?
He's not flashy. Let me just. This is what
Okay.
Klirlov does. He farms his jungle, or he farms either the mid laners. Now he gets a bunch of gold. He gets more gold than any other jungler should get. And what he does is he just makes himself incredibly tanky. And he's just an amazing frontline. Like if you think about Klirlov's career, yes, you always like to talk about this. He's always had the best AD carry in the world on his team. But what does an AD carry need to do to thrive? Like, yeah, there are like Wei Xiao and Name and Def. They're all known for being very self-sufficient AD carries, where in a team fight, they're so good at peeling for themselves and making sure that they stay safe and just riding that thin line between like their cooldowns of doing as much damage as possible and then, kiting away at the last second. But to have an AD carry of that caliber who's already so naturally good at it and then give them probably the best frontline jungler that they could ask for as far as just like a zoning tool, the way that Klirlov goes into team fights, the way that he prioritizes targets, how he falls back and peels is just on an absurdly talented level. So if you give an amazing tank and an amazing frontline and peel to a god tier ADC, this is how you get like the true carry of EDG. Like these two things, they run alongside each other.
Do you think then, if EDG wins in impressive fashion and Klirlov does all of this, that this will actually break Monty? Like finally he'll concede that Klirlov's really good and like it's
he'll
all
never.
great. So.
I don't think Monty prioritizes or I think Monty has a hierarchy of what he considers like a good jungler, what makes an amazing jungler. And so I just don't think that Klirlov's style would ever fit into what Monty values as like the top tier, because Monty believes that there's a very specific style that is the best style and the best way to play the game. Whereas I think that stylistic matchups are more important. That there's not one style that completely dominates the game, that it's just about like a rock, paper, scissors.
Okay.
I could be wrong. This is my assumption. And Monty's probably like, I don't think that at all, bitch. What are you talking about?
Okay, here's a crazy question for you. If you had to pick one player on EDG, who, I mean, obviously you're saying nearly all of them have done well, they all look really good at their positions. If you had to pick one to have an uncharacteristic drop at this tournament, so to be the Dade of this tournament, if anything, who? It's Klirlov?
Just the nature of his career. And it's not just a huge drop. Like, he's not going to perform that he's going to miss every single skill shot. It's just going to be awful. But he has been known to kind of go back. They call it in China, they call it light Klirlov, and they call it dark Klirlov. And dark Klirlov is like the carnivore jungle, like this really scary, like dominating performance. And light Klirlov is like the herbivore style jungle. So my concern is that Klirlov decides to go back to the international stage and he goes back to being a herbivore.
Would it... So I have to put the Monty scenario to you though, but in reverse then. Would it shatter your faith a little bit about Klirlov?
Yes.
If he goes to this tournament and, for example, they put Tom in... Actually, is Tom even going? I think he is, isn't he?
He's not the official sub, it's Easyhoon.
Okay, so they can't put Tom in. Even worse then, Bengi. If Bengi on his Nunu actually like embarrasses Klirlov a bit, would that shatter some of your cast iron faith in Lord Klirlov?
I'd be really...
By the way, the only time I will ever refer to him as Lord Klirlov in the history of any of these shows. I did it in a mocking manner there, Kelsey. That wasn't real. That was sarcasm. Okay, continue.
I would be very disappointed, but it wouldn't be entirely unexpected. Like, there's a percent that it could happen, and if I were to think about, like, what is the worst thing that could happen, like, feasibly to EDG, it would be that Klirlov would just not perform. And, frankly, the last time he was on an international stage, he didn't perform.
One of the things I've noticed that is a factor in like Worlds type tournaments and even in the playoffs compared to the regular split, as we saw in LCK now, is that when you have meta shifts, some teams, so I'm thinking of GE Tigers here, who actually probably would have had a better chance of winning if they'd stuck with some of their old champions and their old style of play, which was shown to work to a degree, even if it wouldn't be as effective. Instead, they all feel that kind of compulsion, like to try and get the newest meta thing, to like switch to whatever's really strong now, switch to champions that are strong, even if maybe it's not the best for their players, Is there any concern that EDG just tries to switch things up completely this tournament? Do you think they'll stick to what worked in LPL playoffs, what worked in LPL, the general approach? Do you think, will they try and specifically tailor things, do you think? What is your sense?
I hope to God they don't switch it up. I think they've actually been pretty like forefront on meta picks. So it's not like they're dated in what they've been doing. I think that they're relatively strong. They've shown even a lot more intelligence in their draft phase. Like if you think about their series against LGD, the fact that they understood that Chwin was going to be the primary like target, just to poke that over and over again, and that all of their pick ban was like, people would look at them and be like, what, LGD got the better draft phase? But if you like know and understand what each player's champion pools are and like who is the weakest member on the team, then it makes much more sense what EDG was doing, because they very purposely targeted Imp's champion pool to deny Daft and Chwin's champion pool to deny Chwin. So I think that they've shown creativity there. If they carry over that understanding and that knowledge as far as their complex draft phase to the international stage with teams that they probably know nothing about, like TSM, Fnatic, and SKT, I don't know. If they did, that'd be wonderful, but...
Right, well, I think that this will be an interesting episode, because on the next episode, anyone who's going back in history and watching these episodes can skip to the next one and see, like, probably just instantly from your face, like, are you broken? Do you have to is there a chapter 2 to that story I described at the beginning, you know, where you go up against the bad guy again, you don't quite win this time, but this time you know it's possible to, and you have to come back the third time, you know? Or will you be triumphant? Will the kind of smugness, which I feel like maybe it contributed to your original downfall, that hubris about the strength of chat, will that be in full force? Will you be insufferable from MSI through to Worlds? That's the answer that people will have to find out on the next exciting episode of Incoming Aggression.